Hello there, it's demo time once more, and we have a bit of lag apparently, and we have this wonderful little violin, not piano, although there's piano as well. Piano and violin music, it's great, it's a good combination. Anyway, I am Cariont, and today we're doing something called Cage of Roses. With this, oh yeah, let me put myself to the side with this very, we'll just see what it is, let's see what it is. Hello, let's put myself in the corner, there's a starry light. Henny, some maid. Master Fike, faster, not master. Fuck's sake, already, it's just started, I'm already fucking, it's, the images are, okay, I should be better, okay. Faster, Mikey, faster. You have to keep moving or else, oh god, they're gaining on us. Mikey, I said Mikey, let's keep it Mikey. Mikey ran through the forest as quickly as her legs would carry her, which, given how exhausted she felt, was not very. She tried to obey Henny's orders, fearful both of letting her friend down and of the shadowy figures who pursued them, but her body refused to listen. Yeah, exhaustion will do that, especially... Please tell me they're not running in high heels. Why do they always wear high heels though? Why do they always wear high heels? Everywhere, in everything. All the female characters always have fucking high heels. It's even ones who are supposedly like we're military. I'm coming off of reading and seeing a bunch of other things. Let's just... This is demo time. Everything else, this is outside of time. It exists whenever. This has been recorded at some point and will be released like years later. I don't even know when or why. Her legs felt numb and insensible, as unfeeling as marble but far, far weaker. It was through nothing save sheer force of will that she was able to keep going, for all her strength had already abandoned her. Though Mikey continued to run, staggering blindly through the fog, she feared it was already a lost cause. She was but a young woman, slender and, while not so very short, quite unaccustomed to exerting herself. She was not like Henny, who spent her days on her hands and knees polishing the floors and blackening the fireplaces. Mikey's fingers were white as ivory, while Henny's were red raw through demeaning, demanding, often physical labor. Mikey's lungs, meanwhile, were straining from the agonizing effort of running. Never before had she known that the act of merely existing could be so exhausting. Mikey, please, you need to hurry. Quickly, Mikey. Henny reached back to take hold of Mikey's hand, her coarse, short fingernails digging into Mikey's palm. Henny was gripping so tightly it hurt, but Mikey knew, should she lag behind, she would find herself in far greater pain than this. Mikey recalled how her father had looked back in their carriage, his eyes wide and his face unusually pale. Mikey had never seen her father look so scared before. He was a tall, imposing figure of a man, dashing even in his early 50s, who was accustomed to issuing orders, not receiving them. Mikey had thought her father immovable, much like the oak tree which shielded her family's mausoleum, a tree which had stood there for longer than the crypt itself. To Mikey, her father had seemed like a force of nature, one which was impossible to argue with or get the better of. This supposition had been turned on its head earlier that night, however, in a mere handful of minutes. For all of his bluster, Mikey's father was only human. He was made of flesh and blood, just like Mikey, and when cut, he bled. He had bled a lot, in fact, all over the plush, upholstered seats of their carriage and onto the floor. His fine clothes had been stained black with the stuff, and the air had stunk of it, sharp and metallic. Mikey could smell her father's blood on her even now, as she and Henny raced through the forest. She couldn't forget it, however much she wished to. Oh, if only the events of that night had been nothing more than a bad dream. Mikey wished that the fog would clear and she would awake, her eyelids fluttering, to discover herself sitting once more in her bed, in her home, the room flooded with pale sunlight. Mikey! But Mikey's surroundings did not shift. The trees continued to press in about her as though they meant to eat her alive. Their shadowy pursuers were beginning to close in on them. Mikey knew she had no hope of outrunning them. She was flagging, her heart hammering in the base of her throat. What would happen when Mikey was not so optimistic to hope for an if they caught her? What would they do to Henny? The thought was almost more than Mikey could bear. It had been bad enough to lose her parents, but to lose Henny too? Why, she had done nothing wrong. Unlike Mikey, Henny was no lady, she was just a maid, She was only being targeted because of her relationship to Mikey and her family. Had Henny been traveling alone, she would pass through the forest quite unscathed. It wasn't as though Henny had any valuables upon her person that were worth the effort of pilfering. "Henny!" Mikey appealed to her maid between sharp gasps of air, which pierced her lungs as keenly as knitting needles. "Please, let go. Leave me be. I'm just slowing you down." "I don't care. I'm not leaving you behind." "But there aren't any buts. I told you, I won't leave you. Now let's keep running." Mikey wanted to run. Really, she did. But her body had already begun to give in. Her heart might have been pumping fit to burst at the base of her throat, but her legs were weak despite the excess blood which filled her, and her hand in Henny's felt cold and clammy. She had exhausted all of her energy simply in escaping from the carriage where her parents' bodies lay. Now, she would die, only a few hundred paces away from their final resting place. Would her mutilated carcass be discovered in the days hence and taken back to her family's home? Would she and her parents be embalmed and sealed away within their mausoleum? Mikey did not much like this thought. Her family's mausoleum was a terrifying place full of somber stone angels and spiderwebs. It was quiet, being situated among all tall trees, but its quietude was not at all relaxing. Its quiet was the deep, fathomless silence of death. Mikey did not want to die. She knew not how she would continue to live on, with both her parents slaughtered before her very eyes, but she did not want to succumb as they had in this forest full of fog. She wanted to go on living, for her sake and for Henny's, though not necessarily for Walter's. "God, they're getting closer. We need to keep running. Come on, Mikey." But like the guttering flame of a candle, the last of her energy had been expended. Mikey's foot caught in a tangled tree root, which jutted from the ground like a bear trap, and she fell. Her hand, which was slick with sweat, slipped free from Henny's. She reached out, searching for her loyal mate through the fog, but to little avail. "Mikey!" Henny's voice echoed in Mikey's ears, shrill and frantic. Mikey's heart juddered in her chest, hard, as though meaning to stop altogether, but it did little good. Her head smacked against the ground with a dull, anticlimactic thud. Mikey's teeth bit against her tongue. She tasted copper. Her vision swam. "Mikey! Oh God, Mikey, get up! Please get up!" And then everything went black. Act 1. The night that never ended. Caught now. "What?" Mikey was greeted, upon waking, by a dull, crushing pain that gripped her skull like a vice. A brackish taste akin to pond water filled her mouth, and with one hand clasped to her head, she coughed. Mikey's body shuddered, and her lungs burned. It took a minute before her coughing fit subsided, but once it did, Mikey began to glance uneasily around her surroundings. She hoped that her immediate surroundings might shed some light upon her predicament, but her hopes were in vain. Mikey had no idea where she was. I mean, you're in a prison cell, but okay. It's pretty obvious it's a dungeon. The floor upon which she was sitting, but why was she sitting on the floor of all things, was made of stone, which felt hard and cold and uncompromising. The walls too were made of stone, as was the ceiling, which felt very far away. A wooden cot was pushed up close against one of the walls, but it was too steeped in shadows Mikey could scarcely make it out. There was a chamber pot lying by the cot which she did not care to examine too closely, but its rim and sides were stained with caked-on filth. A truly unpleasant odor exuded from the chamber pot which made Mikey's eyes sting. It was fortunate that she had no immediate desire to relieve herself, for she had no wish to use this commode. A quick examination of the room, though really it was more like a cell, showed Mikey that, save for the cot and the chamber pot, it was utterly desolate. There was no other furniture to be seen, no shelves, no cupboards, nor even a proper bed. There was no mirror, either, so Mikey could not see herself, but perhaps this was a blessing in disguise. Mikey doubted she would be at her best given she was in so much pain, and she was so very exhausted. She was so cold she could feel goosebumps rippling across her flesh, and her teeth were chattering badly. Mikey wound her arms about her middle and shivered sadly. It was not only the chamber pot that stunk, the very air itself was rank, heavy with the stench of unwashed bodies and general decay. This room, no, she was sure that this was a cell, reeked of death. How had she come to such a place? What had happened to her? Mikey could remember sitting alongside her mother and her father in their carriage as it bore them through the forest, and then, there, at this most pivotal of moments, her memories failed her. Mikey could recall nothing else. Had her parents been there, they would have given her instructions. They always seemed to know what Mickey ought to be doing at any given time. But they were not there, and neither was Henny. Mikey was all alone. Henny had been with her, Mikey was certain, before... Before what? Why could she not remember anything? Oh, Mikey thought sorrowfully, if only she was made of stone, then perhaps her head would not hurt so much. It really did feel that her skull might explode, not from pain, though the pain still remained, but from raw, unbridled fear. Mikey had often dreamed of stealing away from her parents' home to embark upon a brand new life, unfettered by expectations, but she had never wished for this. Tears began to trickle down Mikey's cheeks in crystalline droplets. They scored tracks in the dirt which caked her cheeks and dropped one by one to the floor. Her head bowed, fingers splayed against the stones. Mikey sobbed, and she sobbed, until... What's going on? A soft voice. Oops. Well, a bit too late for that. A soft voice spoke from amongst the teeming shadows. Mikey could not see her as a speaker. She could scarcely see at all, given the darkness, and now her own tears, but she recognized its familiar cadence. The voice belonged to Henny. Mikey's dear friend was here too, in this stone cell which smelt of death, and though Mikey feared for Henny, she could feel relief bubbling up inside her. She was not alone after all. Henny? Mikey crawled forth on her hands and knees, being too exhausted to stand, and stared into the shadows. Henny, is that you? Mikey? A shaft of moonlight spilled through the singular barred window hewn high into the wall of their cell, and finally Mikey was afforded a view of her maid. Though christened Henrike, Mikey had always called her beloved maid Henny. It seemed a more appropriate name for so cheery a woman, for Henny, come rain or shine, was rarely seen without a smile. Henny was not smiling now, however. She was sitting upon the wooden cot which Mikey had first spied, her head bent. Henny's face looked woefully weary, and had all lost much of its usual pinkness. Her apron, once white, now stained and sullied with dirt. Henny's shoes had been black and sensible, but now they were mired in filth, and her socks were rucked up again about her ankles. Henny's hands, which she held at her front, were trembling like those of a woman thrice her age. She looked an awful sight, but Mikey knew she could hardly have been any better herself. Henny's hair might have been a mess, but at least she kept it short. There was not so very much of Henny's dark tresses to be worked with into a state of disorder. Mikey's own hair, meanwhile, was very long and curly, and though she had worn it in a chignon, she could now feel it straggling loosely about her shoulders. The back of her neck prickled, either from the cold or from a dislodged hairpin or two. Perhaps that was why Henny stared at Miko so. Once she had regained her own sense of equilibrium, as though she had seen a ghost. My God, Mikey! Henny looked so alarmed Mikey felt almost ashamed. Mikey was no stranger to shame. She felt it frequently, in fact, when she was with her mother, but rarely raised its ugly head in Henny's presence. Since Mikey's girlhood, Henny had been her one staunch, steadfast companion. She was the only person Mikey knew who took Mikey for who she was, rather than wishing, often aloud to her face, that she could be more appreciative, more amenable, more effusive, more like a lady and less like herself. Henny didn't want Mikey to be more. She only wanted Mikey to be Mikey. Did that mean then that Mikey did not look like Mikey in that moment? But who else did she resemble, if not herself? What had happened to her? Are you alright, Mikey? Oh, look at your poor face. Henny rose from the wooden cot, which creaked, and crouched before her friend. Reaching out, still shaking, she cupped Mikey's cheeks in her fingers and said, "You're bleeding." "I am?" "Yes, you've a nasty cut beneath your right eye, your cheek." Henny sucked in a breath, her expression grim. "It's all banged up. You're positively black and blue." "Oh, I hadn't realized. I'm sorry, Henny." "What?" Henny, who had procured the handkerchief from her skirt pocket, it fortunately wasn't dirty, paused in dabbing at Mikey's face to look at her with bemusement. "Why are you apologizing to me, you daft goose? You've done nothing to feel sorry for." I don't know. I'm just sorry for making you worry, I suppose." "Oh, think not of it. It's my job to worry about you. I'm your maid, remember?" "Well, of course I remember that much. My thoughts might be in a state of disarray for the present, but I would never forget you. You are much more than my maid, Henny. You're my friend too, my dearest friend. And I could very well say the same about you. That's why it hurts seeing you in such a frightful state. Do I look so very bad?" "Well, now..." Henny scanned Mikey's face, her brown eyes now bright with mischief. "That depends on how honest you want me to be." "Oh dear. Do I look as bad as all that?" "You've certainly looked better. Your face is as banged up as a windfall apple." "An apple?" Mikey shook her head in wonderment. "I only hope that the apple isn't riddled with worms. I don't think you've anything to worry about on that score, at least." "Well, that is a relief. I suppose things could always be worse." "Right you are, that's the spirit. You're still alive, and so am I, and we're together. That'll account for something. Although..." Henny finished wiping the worst of the congealed blood and muck from Mikey's cheek, then drew back, her soiled kerchief gripped tight in her hand. Her expression newly dour, she said after a moment's pause, "I am afraid that your parents might have been so fortunate." "What?" Mikey's heart leapt in her chest at this somber announcement. "What happened to them, Henny? Do you know what's going on?" "You don't?" "I recall that we were traveling to Augsburg to visit my fiancée, but as for how we came here..." Mikey closed her eyes in the hope of remembering something, but again, nothing came. Her mind remained stubbornly blank, as featureless as a snowy field, all floor blanketed in untrammeled whiteness. "I am afraid I cannot remember." "Not a single thing?" "Nothing." "I see." Henny grit her teeth together for a few moments, her eyes dark. She seemed to be weighing up her words, as a baker might measure out flour and sugar before speaking. "That's not such a surprise, I suppose. You hit your head pretty hard back there. It might be for the best that you can't remember all of the gory details." "I wish I could forget what happened myself, but..." Henny's voice trailed away as, awkwardly, she gripped her kerchief. That kerchief had been the only clean thing in Mikey and Henny's cell, but now it too was ruined, streaked with brown and red. How deep was the cut that Mikey had sustained, and how much had she bled? This too remained a mystery. Mikey did not know. There seemed much, all of a sudden, she was ignorant of. She felt so very unworldly she might as well have been a little girl again, enthused after she had successfully stolen the key to her family's mausoleum. Mikey had not known, as she stood in the chill entrance of the mausoleum, that she was about to lower herself into a subterranean world of death and decay, though part of her had wondered. "Henny?" Mikey took Henny's hand in her own, her cracked fingernails digging into her skin. "What happened? Tell me, please. I want to know." "Yes, I thought you might. That does make things a mite complicated, though. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. Just promise you won't take against me for what I'm about to tell you. I've gone through a lot tonight already, and that will be the straw to break the camel's back. Henny, please. You should know that is a trivial of concern. I'm fully aware that none of this is your fault. You have only ever sought to protect me. I have no better friend than you. Not in all the world. And it's precisely because I want to protect you that I don't want to go into all this. I know they'll accept you. Christ. It upsets me too. It's an upsetting situation all around. It's rotten, really, what people are capable of, but... Henny paused. She sucked in a breath, and then, in a calmer tone, she said, "Just how much do you want to know?" "How much is there to know?" "Oh, I remember everything. I'll always remember tonight, I expect. It made quite the impression. Horrible things always do." "Oh dear, are things truly that dire?" "They're pretty bad, yes." "Give me an abridged account then. I've no need to hear everything." "Right you are." Henny bowed her head in acquiescence, her face half swallowed by the shadows. The beam of light which had penetrated their drab cell had long since been extinguished, the moon obscured beneath the rolling fog. It was so cold in their cell Mikey could not cease her shivers. Even her teeth felt cold, like shards of ice implanted into her gums. Henny's proximity served as something of a comfort, but it could not rid Mikey of her trepidation. She knew, once Henny relayed the past events to her, her life would no longer be the same. Everything would change. It was changing already, in fact, so quickly that Mikey hardly had a chance to gather her bearings. She felt lost, adrift, and hopelessly afraid. "I'm sorry to tell you this, Mikey, but during our travels the carriage... it was attacked by bandits." "What? No." "Yes, they kept creeping out from the fog like... I don't know. Monsters from a children's story, maybe, but much scarier. They waylaid the carriage, then stormed it. They drew out their daggers and threatened your father, and when he refused to comply, well..." Henny's expression twisted. "They stabbed him." "What?" Mikey stared. She had expected as much before Henny began her gruesome tale, but the news still shook her. Evidently, she had not been half so prepared to hear the worst as she had imagined. "Oh God, not my papa, my poor papa. Don't tell me he didn't... I'm sorry, but..." Henny sniffed. "It's as you're probably suspecting. His wound was a deep one, and he died." "Dead? My papa? Dead?" "Dead as a doornail, I'm afraid. I didn't hang around to see what happened, but... well, it was all over so quickly I don't think he suffered, at least." "And my mama? What of her? Don't tell me she also..." Henny didn't reply, but the discomfort which crossed her face left Mikey with no doubts as to her mother's fate. In one brief night, both of Mikey's parents had been slaughtered. Now, she was an orphan. "And what of us, Henny? How did we escape? I find it hard to believe the bandits would just let us go." "Oh, I'm sure we would have joined your parents if we'd sat still, like good little girls, but I didn't want to do that. I took your hand while they were busy with your mother, and we ran away. We fled through the woods, but the bandits took chase pretty darn quick. It was very dark, and the fog was thick, and I could hardly see what was happening. At one point, you tripped and you fell. That's how you got that nasty cut on your porous forehead, and I was dragged down with you. We lay there on the ground in the dirt while the bandits trampled about looking for us. I figured we were both a couple of goners. I'd started to say my prayers to the Lord Almighty, but then... we survived. Yes, we survived." This, Mikey supposed, was not such a surprise. It went without saying, really, that they had survived. Otherwise, they would not have been sitting in this ghastly cell, speaking to one another. Either the bandits had spared them, which seemed unlikely, or somebody had come to their defense. Who would have been wandering the woods so very late at night, however? I mean, it's obviously vampires. We know it's vampires. We saw it the title screen. Mikey could hardly credit it. Their escape must have been the stuff that fantasies were made of. Do you know how we escaped, Henny? I know what my eyes saw, but if my eyes can be trusted or not, well, that's another matter altogether. I think I might have bumped my head myself. It was all so peculiar. At the time, it seemed like a miracle. But looking back on it, that ain't the right word. Miracles suggest gods and all his angels, but there was naught holy about this. It was a right proper mess, really. A total bloodbath. Blood? Yes, there was blood, and lots of it. It's hard for me to explain, but all I know is, one moment we were sprawled up on the dirt, you unconscious, I half out of my mind with fright as the bandits approached, and the next, they were gone. Gone? But where and how? Did they run away? Not necessarily. Not of their own free will. The fog parted, you see, and then this figure, this woman, she appeared so quick, it was like she sprung up from the earth. She wasn't very tall, I don't think she was at least, and she was very skinny, but the way she looked, the way she moved, there was something unnatural about her. I didn't get a very good look at what happened next, but I saw her go after those bandits. I think there were at least 4 of them, but that woman soon took care of them. There was so much blood and a lot of mud. It stunk to high heaven, it did. Brought tears to my eyes. That woman though, the woman in white, she didn't seem fussed at all. She stood there once she had finished, beneath the moon, like nothing had happened. And then... Henny pressed her fingers to her brow and, overwhelmed, shook her head. I don't remember anything after that. I think I must have fainted. When I finally woke up, I found myself here. It was your crying that woke me up. I've never been able to rest easy while you're in tears, Makey. Yes, I know, you've always been so good and so kind. Thank you, Henny. Mikey chanced to smile, though the muscles about her mouth felt atrophied, worn away following the news of her parents' demise. I've no idea what I would do without you. It sounds like you saved me. From the bandits, I suppose I did, but I wasn't much use when you took that nasty spill. There's no way I would have been able to carry you to safety, not when we were all turned about in the woods and I'd no idea where we were. I think I scraped my own shin too. My ankle aches. We'd have been goners if that woman hadn't showed beard. But now that I'm talking about it, it doesn't sound real. I can't think of any woman who would be able to beat out 4 men in a test of strength, not even your own Mademoiselle Blancard. Mikey's smile widened at this, despite the severity of their situation, and she was even able to manage a laugh. It was a weak laugh which contained little in the way of mirth, but it was sincere. Henny never failed to cheer her up. She must have had a knack for it. Mikey was too old to believe in magic, but when she was with Henny, she sometimes wondered. Are you sure it was a woman who fended off those bandits? Perhaps it was some sort of animal instead, and you failed to perceive it in the fog. That could be it. Like I said, my mind's a mess. I feel like I've lost a good 10 years off my life, although... Here Henny smiled grimly, in the manner of all survivors after witnessing something horrid. That's better than having it cut short altogether. We must be thankful for small mercies, yes, even if our lives were saved at my parents' expense. Mikey squeezed her eyes shut. She could feel tears beating upon her lashes anew, but this was time she was able to subdue them. The news of her parents' death was a heavy burden to bear, but Mikey, not having witnessed their final moments, found it hard to imagine. It still did not seem quite real. The shock of it all, perhaps, had blunted her senses. It would take a while for her parents' passing to truly register. And when it did, however, Mikey did not doubt that tears would come, thicker and faster than before. It had not always been so, but her childhood misadventures in her family's crypt had left her something of a crybaby. Now then, Mikey inhaled, then glanced about. Where do you suppose we are? And how do you suppose we got here? That's a good question. I've been wondering that myself. It's not the nicest of digs, is it? Not particularly, no. It's awfully drab. And it's damp too. I'm freezing. You poor thing, you. Come here. Henny shifted closer to Mikey, then drew her arms about her. Holding her close, she then glanced about. Both Maid and Mr. squinted into the shadows, as though they might unearth some secret way of escaping. A trapdoor perhaps, or a hidden passageway. But to Mikey's disappointment, she found the cell quite unchanged. It was every bit as sparse as she had recalled. The shadows did little to mask this fact, and still, it stank. Goodness me, it's not much to look at, is it? We might as well be in a prison cell. I think that might be what this is. Henny drew back from Mikey, her legs crossed beneath her her legs crossed beneath her upon the stone floor, and frowned. I reckon you're right. I wonder who brought us here. You and me both. It was nice of our mysterious benefactor, or benefactress, to rescue us, though they can't be all that kind if they're going to let us suffer in here. You'd think they could at least have put us up in a nicer room. I'm not expecting first-class accommodations, but you deserve better than this, Mikey. This place isn't fit for rats, let alone people. It's alright. Are you being serious? Henny raised an eyebrow, while Mikey smiled. It's better than being dead, at least. Even if these lodgings are a mite uncomfortable. Only a mite? Well, quite a bit if I'm being honest. Mikey drew her arms about her legs, her knees beneath her chin, and said, When I woke up, I was lying on the floor. On the floor? Henny's eyebrows shot up her forehead until they met her hairline. The gesture was so exaggerated it managed to bring another smile to Mikey's lips, despite how very dire the situation was. I suppose it makes sense, there being only one bed, but oh, that is too much. I can't believe they'd fling you about like a sack of spuds. Many unbelievable things have happened tonight. Our benefactor must have been bucking the trend. Some benefactor. When I get my hands on them, I'll give them what for. Don't, Henny. It wouldn't do to pick a fight with whoever brought us here. I wouldn't want to anger them. Not when we are at their mercy. Why, but that makes us sound like captives. Is that not what we are? This is a cell after all, and we have no means of escaping. We're being treated like prisoners. I know, but it still stings. I don't care about me, but I don't want to see you being treated like a convict, not when you've been through so much. You've been through worse. At least I don't remember what happened, unlike you. And you're the one who'll be saddled with the consequences, poor Mikey. It was your parents, not mine, who were... well... I don't suspect there's much point in trying to suss out who's suffering more than who. As it stands, we're both in this together. I won't abandon you, Mikey, so try not to worry. Keep your chin up, we'll get through this. Thank you, Henny. I almost believe it coming from you. You should. I don't say things I don't mean, you know. Now, let's see. Maybe things aren't as dire as they look. There could be a way to escape yet. Henny rose to her feet, though unsteadily, and did a circuit of the cell. The shadows made it seem larger than it was, for they obscured the walls, but it did not take Henny many steps to canvass the full length of the dingy room. She pressed her fingertips to the walls, then her ear, as though the stonework might whisper their weaknesses to her. But the walls, of course, remained mute. Henny then took the bars between her fingers and squeezed experimentally, but they refused to yield. Oh, come on! Frustrated, Henny gave the bars a kick. The tip of her shoe collided with them, loosing clods of dirt from her soles, but... damn it all! The bars refused to budge. They were quite impenetrable. Sighing, Henny changed tack. She moved from the door to glance up at the window, but this was similarly barred, too high up to reach and much too small to squeeze through. It almost seemed like a miracle that such a small window allowed any moonlight at all to spill into the cell when the clouds in the fog shifted. "And?" Mikey asked when the disenchanted Henny flopped back down beside her with a rustle of her skirts. "Did you uncover anything?" "Not all, except that we're more trapped than I thought." "I thought you might have come up to that conclusion, yes." "God!" Henny kicked her off her right shoe, then began to massage her feet, which had begun to throb. "This is a rum situation. I wonder what we're to do." "I don't think there's much we can do other than wait." "I suppose you're right. I can't say I like the thought of that, though. We're sitting ducks here. I feel we ought to be taking some kind of action." And he looked about the cell once more, then sighed. "But I'm drawing a blank here. I can't think of anything we could do." "I'm sorry for being so hopeless, Mikey. I meant to look after you, but I'm at a total loss." "Don't apologize, dear Henny. I feel better simply being with you." "That's something at least. I wish I could be of some real use, though." "You are of real use. Without you, I'd be an unconscionable mess weeping on the floor." "Well, we can't be having that. It breaks my heart to see you cry." "Much as it breaks mine to see you self-flagellate so over something that is not your fault." "Touché. Now that we're all well and truly stuck here, I suppose we ought to make the best of it. Although I have a bad feeling about this place. It gives me the creeps. I don't know who imprisoned us here or what cause, but they've no manners to speak of. Why, it's almost as if..." Henny began, but she found herself unable to finish the sentence. Yeah, there was a silent scream there. A sound issued forth from darkness, emitting from beyond their tightly sealed cell. It was a faint sound, but Henny still heard it, hovering in the sour and musty air. It sounded like a scream. "Good God! What in the world was that?" "I suppose that was just the wind." Wishful thinking. "Do you really think so?" "Yes, I imagine." Mikey answered in the affirmative, though deep down both she and Henny knew the truth. That had not been in the wind. It had been too raw, too pained, and, though faint, unmistakably human. With no obvious way of escape and very little to do, Mikey and Henny had no choice but to idle their time away. They sat upon the floor together with their legs folded primly, like two little girls conducting a make-believe tea party. Henny had at first balked at the thought of her mistress sitting on a stone like a plebeian, but Mikey's dress was already so dirty it didn't matter. The two women did not, however, abandon themselves to inertia. Henny knew they had to do something to take their minds off their ghastly predicament. Fortunately, Henny was not empty-handed. She had in her pocket, alongside the kerchief he had used to wipe Mikey's cheek, a pack of cards. These cards were worn and bent at corners, but they remained perfectly functional. For want of a better way to use their time, Henny proposed to Mikey a game of Joker, a game which Mikey agreed to. The two women played several rounds of Joker, examining their decks and dispensing of the cards. The game did not require a great degree of tactical thinking, but it helped alleviate some of Mikey's worries. It could not, alas, alleviate the cold, but Mikey had been shivering for so long she had almost grown accustomed to it. She had been in a dank, unmiserable cell for so long she could scarcely remember how it even felt to be warm. Had her journey to Augsburg continued unimpeded, she would now be sitting by the fire in Walter Gerhardt's living room, or else tucked up in one of his many guest bedrooms with a warming pan at her feet. Both Augsburg and Walter Gerhardt seemed very far away to Mikey now, though being confined thus in a prison cell. How long had she been sitting with Henny on the floor, shivering? Mikey did not know. She could not tell. All Mikey really knew, in her infinite ignorance, was that the night seemed hopelessly long. She hopelessly small and insignificant. There was no clock in Mikey's cell, and neither she nor Henny carried timepieces upon them. The only means Mikey had of tracking the advancement of the hour was the sliver of sky she could see beyond the narrow window, situated high above her head. She could recall that the sky had been dark upon her waking, and remained so now, 3 games of Joker later. The moon, which emerged from the fog at irregular intervals, shone its pallid light upon Mikey's head and upon her hand of cards, lighting her joker and his wide, rictus grin. Mikey had never much cared for the joker in Henny's trusty pack of cards. His expression unnerved her. Every once in a while, as she played, Mikey spared a few glances at the barred window above her head. Though she could not guess the hour, she knew it was late. It could have been an advanced hour of the night, or could have been, by the same token, the very, very early hours of the following morning. The calendar might have shifted already, from one day to the next, but Mikey was none the wiser. The sky was so dark, Mikey found it hard to believe the sun would ever rise again. The darkness which abounded within her cell was so complete, it seemed to have blotted out the very concept of the morning altogether. She feared she would never again see the sun's golden rays, never again hear the twittering of the starlings in the trees which announced a brand new day. When did the birds begin to chirp beyond her bedroom window anyway? Mikey could not recall, but she thought it must have been around 6 in the morning. Mikey had gone to bed at 10 every night, like a dutiful daughter ought, but she had often found it hard to sleep for a full, unbroken 8 hours. Yeah, because we're not really meant to do that. At least not historically, most of our history. A couple of... yeah, but it's adaptive. Everyone's got different sleep schedules. So, whatever. But yeah, like it makes sense, like sleeping in the middle of the day when it's super hot and unproductive, and the dead of night when it's also a bit too cold. Like 2 naps of like a few hours each. I mean, that's why we like to nap, because it's really nice to nap at the middle of the day and then sleep, for a short amount of time. Oh, I don't nap myself at all. I only need like 6 hours. Anyway, I'll getting off track, which is kind of the point, but whatever. She would rise at odd hours, at 1 or 2 or 3, her head full of thoughts, and often she found it hard to sleep again. When this occurred, Mikey would rise from bed to sit by her windowsill, her forehead, in the summer, pressed to the glass. That always helped cool her, and her errant thoughts alongside it. Oh, how her mind raced. "This is ridiculous," Henny groused, all while examining her cards. "We ought to be at Herr Gerhard's right now, safe as houses. We weren't so very far from Augsburg, at least I don't think we were, when we were attacked. Why did those bandits have to go after us?" "We were just unfortunate, I suppose. I can't imagine the bands meant specifically to target us. We just happened to be there." "You're probably right, but... goodness. Of all the awful luck. At least you've had a fair run during our game. You've beaten me out soundly during every single hand." "Ha, well true, I suppose I should thank heaven for small mercies, eh?" Henny smiled at Mikey's attempt to cheer her, but it didn't last. Both Henny's smile and Mikey's cheer were half-hearted, and they were soon swallowed by the sinister darkness of their cell. "It's a shame I don't feel more thankful. I wonder what Herr Gerhard would make of this. He'd be off his head, I'm sure, if he knew the state you're being kept in, Mikey. I'm enraged too, for you and him. You deserve far better than this. You're a von Essen, for crying out loud. The person who's holding us here will feel mighty sorry when they realize who you are. You're a real lady." "Maybe." Mikey's reply was vague in both tone and meaning. Not even Mikey herself was sure whether she meant to disparage Henny's optimistic assertions that her being a lady would grant her any favor with her captor, or whether she meant to challenge the notion she was a lady at all. Mikey had been born to a noble family, it was true, with a lineage which could be traced back centuries, but the von Essens were not what they had been. Half a century of poor financial decisions and a grandfather with a compulsive gambling addiction had led to the squandering of much of the von Essens' wealth. Typical, of course. While still in the possession of their family home and a veritable fleet of maidservants, the family's finances had been in a dire state ever since Mikey could remember. Though not openly wanting for cash, Mikey's parents had made a good many purchases based on their family's prestige rather than the figures in their bank account. I'll keep up your appearances. Mikey's wedding to Herr Gerhard had been an attempt to shore up her family's wealth before they could fall from grace altogether, but that now seemed an impossibility. How could Mikey wed Walter when she was incarcerated? If Mikey had loved Walter, she surely would have shed tears over so cruel a fate. As it was, however, she was curiously calm. What did she care how Walter Gerhard felt? She barely knew him. Well, not to worry. Herr Gerhard must be sitting in his drawing room now, wondering where the blazes we are. Herr Gerhard is sure to send out a search party before long. He'll be worried sick about you, Mikey. Do you really think so? Absolutely. I mean, he is your fiancé. He's got to be worried. You're such a sweet thing. I don't see how he couldn't. Thank you, Henny. I appreciate it. Don't thank me, Mikey. I'm just stating the facts. If I was a man and I had a fiancé like you, you can bet that I wouldn't let you out of my sight. Perhaps it's a good thing that I'm in here with you then. You at least know I'm alright. Yes, you are, and I thank heaven on high for it. You know I'd do anything to keep you safe, Mikey. I know. Mikey could well believe that, coming from Henny. When it came to Henny's claims about Walter, however, Mikey was less certain. Regal man with jewels strewn about him everywhere. What did she know about Walter, really, other than his age and his occupation, and how fabulously, excessively wealthy he was? Mikey had met Walter on only 3 past occasions, and then exchanged almost as many words. The man was a stranger to her, and Mikey's desire to marry him was inversely proportioned with her parents' desire to see her walking down the aisle. Mikey had been dreading her visit to Augsburg for well over a month. Now it had been terminated, she felt a perverse sort of relief. I mean, fair enough, honestly. Part of Mikey had even begun to wonder whether the bandits' attack had brought with it some good, alongside all the bad. But that, Mikey chastised herself, was hopelessly cruel. Were her parents' lives truly worth that little to her? It was true enough that she may never see Walter Gerhard again, but she would never see her mother, nor her father again either. It was not a fair trade, not by any stretch of the imagination. How could she ever have thought of such a thing? Look, people's minds wander about everything, especially when you have nothing but thoughts. So like, it's reasonable to have weird thoughts. Everyone's got weird thoughts. Everyone has weird fucking thoughts. Just let them happen. What matters is what actions you take. Well, based on those thoughts. If any. If you take thoughts into account for your actions at all, that is. I'm not sure what I'm saying anymore. Anyway. She really must have been wicked. Was that why she had found herself in such a dire situation? Perhaps this was God's way of punishing her for being a poor daughter, and a sinner who spent too much of her time lost in daydreams, imagining things which could never and would never be. Mikey and Henny sat in their cell for what could have been minutes, or hours, or even days, whiling away the time. By God, there was so much time. With continued, unending, incessant games of Joker. Mikey's heart was not in the game, her head being otherwise occupied, and Henny trounced her soundly 12-1. Henny was better than Mikey at card games in general, so this came as little surprise. Mikey was accustomed to losing, and accepted her failures with good grace. There were more important things in life than card games, and in any event, Mikey was glad to be rid of the eerily grinding jokers in her deck. Little of note happened during these dead, empty hours. Mikey had begun to wonder in a detached way, as Henny launched into their 14th round of Joker, whether they would ever meet their rescuer. Perhaps whoever had hauled them from the forest had done so, not as an act of kindness, but as a means of prolonging their suffering. Maybe they meant to keep them locked in this cell, alone, until time itself slowed to a trickle, then ceased, the squalid stone walls tumbling about them to crush the emaciated corpses in the debris. But soon, shockingly soon, or so it seemed, despite all of the interminable waiting, Mikey found her hypothesis proved wrong. She could hear, above the sound of Henny shuffling the deck, a sound. Footsteps. The footsteps were quiet enough, at first, that Mikey wondered whether she had imagined them. But as the sounds elapsed, they became louder still, until even Henny heard them. Goodness me! Henny fumbled with the cards, then threw them down. Red hearts and black spades spilt across the stone. Can you hear that, Mikey? Yes, I can. Somebody must be coming. Our rescuer from the woods, do you think? They could be a rescuer, yes. But maybe... Mikey chose not to finish this thought. Her saliva felt too thick in her throat, like tar, and she shivered. She didn't want to extinguish the hope which she could, flickering now in Henny's eyes. That would have been cruel. Henny's head swiveled to the grated iron door, excitable as a puppy, and wide-eyed, she peered through the shadows. This is a turn for the better. I was beginning to worry they'd forgotten all about us. I can't wait to come face to face with them. I'll be sure to tell them exactly what I think about their so-called hospitality. You've said that once before, Henny, and I wish you wouldn't. I don't want to anger them. Oh, stuff and nonsense. I'm sure it will be fine. If they want to harm us, they'd have plenty of chance to do it already, surely. That is true, but... The footsteps drew closer still, echoing about the stone walls, echoing inside Mikey's skull. The footsteps could represent only two things. They would mean salvation, if they were lucky, but Mikey found it difficult to believe this. Neither she nor Henny had been very lucky that night, despite Henny's continued winning hands in Joker. It seemed far more likely that those footsteps would bring about yet more suffering. And, sure enough... Well, well, would you look at what the cat dragged in? The voice that cut through Mikey's musings was a proud, haughty one, the syllables polished to perfection like cut glass. The voice belonged quite obviously to a woman. Well, can't do that, but you know. And given her pronunciation, she must have been well bred. Perhaps their rescuer was a lady, then. A Vaughn such and such like Mikey, from a family whose ancestral home was vast and old and grand enough to have its very own dungeon. Whereas most nobility used their subterranean storage spaces for wine cellars, this family seemed to prefer taking prisoners. The thought did not fill Mikey with much confidence about her mysterious rescuer. Anxiously, she glanced up to meet the source of the said voice, and when she did... Oh! Mikey could not help but gasp in surprise. There's the vampire. Even silver hair and everything. The owner of the voice, who now stood upon the opposite side of the cell's door, was not at all what Mikey had imagined. She was shorter than Mikey had expected, shorter than Mikey herself, was dwarfed by her wealthier, significantly older fiancé, and slender with it, her cheekbones high, her neck not dissimilar to the stem of a flower. Her skin was frighteningly pale, like that of a corpse, and beneath her eyes Mikey could see dark rings similar to those she often sported during the long nights at her bedroom window, unable to sleep. The woman, or was she a girl, had hair so fair it was almost white, which almost seemed to glow in the moon's light. Her hair was not worn in a chignon, I'm just gonna call it chignon, but instead was loose. It tumbled about her shoulders in waves, all disarrayed in a manner which would have made Mikey's mother swoon from the sheer impropriety of it all. The girl's appearance, but was she a girl, was striking, not only because of her indeterminable age, but because of her eyes, which were widely spaced and fringed with the most luxurious of lashes. Her irises were not brown like Henny's, nor blue like Mikey's. They were not green, nor hazel, nor grey, nor any of the other shades Mikey had seen in the faces of her family's servants, in the attendants at the boutiques to which her mother took her, and the congregation at her local parish. Her irises were instead bright red, so much so they bordered on the visceral. These lovely irises were even redder than the blood which had been seeped from Mikey's sliced cheek, and seemed to be full of violence. The girl was a perfect stranger to Mikey, but her eyes told more than a pleasant chit-chat ever could. She was not normal. Mikey knew instinctively, as she gazed upon her, that she should keep her distance if she could, but this only made her, conversely, feel even more enchanted. She could not look away from her. It was as though her captor had placed her under a spell. That woman! Henny shifted back, her skirts shifting against the ground. She's the one I told you about, Mikey. The one from the woods. She's the one who fought off those bandits. I thought what I saw was unbelievable, but now I know it wasn't a dream. She really is real. She killed all those men. She's a monster. Oh, a monster am I? The woman's unnatural eyes narrowed and, with a smile, said, You cut me to the quick. You humans do. At least you would, were I not so accustomed to it. Perhaps I bring it upon myself, given the unusual manner in which I treat my guests, but you could at least try to be polite. Why, if it were not for me, the both of you would be lying in the woods right now, mangled beyond all recognition. So you really were the one who saved us. I thought as much. Yours isn't a face anyone could forget in a hurry. Why, thank you. I will take that as a compliment. I am very striking, I know. Why did you save us, though? And how? I can't believe you brought us back here, wherever here is, on your own. You must have had help. Oh, if only. But alas, I've not had any help for... Well, let's see. It must have been a century at least. A century? Henny gawked at the woman, her eyes agog. But that would make you older than any of my grandmother. That can't be right. You don't look a day over 18. Oh, do you really think so? You're too kind. Laughing softly, the woman extricated a key from her pocket and inserted it into the awaiting keyhole. Deftly, she returned it and deftly she stepped inside the cell, the hem of her dark cape dragging against the uneven stone floor. Once inside the cell, she turned to close the door, then locked it anew. There, that ought to do it. It will be horribly tedious if you try to run from me. I would be able to catch you, of course, but I'd rather not bother with all of the fuss. With the door secured, the woman placed the key inside her pocket and turned to look at her prisoners. Her red eyes met Mikey's, which were narrowed with mistrust, and pouting, she said, Now, why are you looking at me like that? You're making me feel quite unwelcome. I thought you would be relieved to see my face, after being left to languish in the catacombs of my castle for hours on end, but maybe I was hoping for too much. In any case, you shouldn't frown like that, dear. It's an awful waste. You'll wrinkle your pretty face. This chastisement was familiar to Mikey. She had heard it many times from her mother. While Mikey had been trained to obey her mother without question, however, it was not so with this strange woman. Some of her reticence fell away and, needled, Mikey said, What I do with my face is my own concern. I'm sure it's none of your business. My goodness. You're feistier than you look. I took you for a shrinking violet, but maybe I was mistaken. You might make for quite the amusing plaything, though you'd be a good sight prettier if you smiled. I can't say I blame you for being so surly, though. I never liked smiling on command either. Though it's been many years since anybody last tried to give me orders. It's fortunate nobody can tell me what to do now, at least. It came at quite the price, but... Oh well, never mind. Where are my manners? My name is Magdalena, but you can call me Lena. My family's name, meanwhile, is of no particular importance. They might have commanded some respect back in the day, but it is not so now. They've long since been obliterated. I doubt history will remember them. It would not wish to. I am all that is left of their legacy. A fact I would very much love to rub in their faces, but alas, I never got the chance. It is very nice to meet you, for the second time this night. So saying, Magdalena dropped a neat curtsy, taking hold of her cape in the lieu of a skirt. But I am afraid I will not be afforded much of a chance to properly know you. While I would relish the chance to speak to a couple of young maidens such as yourselves, I have designs for you beyond idle chatter. And what do you mean by that exactly? Only that, now I have brought you here, I cannot continue to let you live. You have already seen too much. What? Henny stared at Magdalena with wide eyes, so full of fear the air swelled with it. What do you mean? What I said. Do try to keep up. It's awfully tedious having to explain myself down to the finer details. But I suppose you have the right to know the bare minimum, prisoners though you may be. I would hate to keep you in suspense, and at this point, it doesn't matter how much you know. You won't be able to tell anybody else what you might learn here. You'll not be venturing forth beyond the walls of my castle ever again. Magdalena smiled, her lips lifting in a wicked grin not so very unlike that of the Joker in Henny's pack of cards. Though Magdalena's face was white, her lips were red, much like her eyes. They stood out in her milky face like a rose blooming despite the winter's chill. Or else, Mikey thought with a shudder, freshly spilt blood. You must understand that I am not a normal woman. No human can hope to best me when it comes to competition of sheer strength, as the bands who are pursuing you soon discovered. It didn't take me more than a few seconds to dispatch them. The fight they put up was so pathetic, it makes me wonder why they even bothered. If they'd any respect for my time, they would have slit their own throats with their daggers and saved me the trouble. You humans can be awfully thoughtless. But if they had done that, I wouldn't have been able to bring the leader of that little group back to my castle. He was in a bad way, and I was obliged to introduce myself to him before bestowing upon you similar honors. I really must apologize for making you wait. Magdalena dropped another curtsy, as an elegant lady might, but it smacked of insincerity. How many men and women had Magdalena brought to her castle? And how many had she summarily tortured? Mikey knew of at least one, besides herself and Henny. The bandits' leader. Did you kill him? Eventually, yes. It was quite the sight. You ought to have seen the way he begged and pleaded and groveled at my feet. A grown man like that, who was practically made of muscle. Oh, how fickle fortune is. Just 1 hour hence he was the predator, stalking his prey through the woods, and the next. Magdalena drew a hand across her neck, in the unequivocal, universal gesture of a slit throat. Well, what goes around comes around. He got what he deserved, and his screams really were exquisite. Did you perchance happen to hear them? He was being rather loud. What? Oh goodness! Surprised, are you? You shouldn't be. That man was a bandit, a vulture in a man's flesh who profited on misery. If it weren't for me, you would have gone the same way as the poor unfortunates in that stalled carriage, the driver and the horses too. Nobody was spared their ravages, man nor beast. They made quite the grisly mess. Were I a century younger, it would have been enough to turn even my stomach. Maybe that is so, but to gloat over another death like that? It doesn't seem right. You're twisted. If I am twisted, that is only because this world. Magdalena began, but then paused. A momentary furrow captured her brow, but soon it straightened out, as though nothing of note had occurred. Well, never mind that. I do not wish to spout cliches about good and evil. I would begin to bore myself. The fact of the matter is that man got what he deserved, as did his compatriots. I took great pains to ensure that. I paid that brigand pack twofold for what he did to you. Did you know that he tried to be stoic in the beginning? Humans often are. Human males in particular. They have so much pride. It's funny really, that a cur like that would care so very much about appearances. He was less a man than he was a dog, but he still had pretensions of greatness, or of grandeur. I soon stripped him of those lofty delusions, however. Humans are very alike in one regard, at least. You all scream the same after your bones have been broken, and you all bleed red. That man was a brigand, I'll grant you that, who deserved the hangman's noose. But that's for a court of law to decide, not you. What you did isn't justice, it's barbaric. You shouldn't be taking pleasure in other people's deaths. What gave you the right to kill him anyway? I had every right to kill him. He was trespassing upon my land, as were you and the young lady here. His life was forfeit the moment he encroached upon my territory. The Lord's Prayer may say that we ought to forgive those who wrong us, but I have no patience for such teachings. They do not apply to me. The Lord has forsaken me. I am no longer a member of his congregation. He would have no love for me as I am now, and I have little love for him. I cannot conceive how he could have let me suffer so if he truly existed. Sometimes I do wonder. So you mean to add blasphemy to your list of crimes? No, I've done far, far worse than that in my time. The morals of you good sententious churchgoers does not apply to me. I am not of your kind. I am a drinker of blood who walks the night. I have been alive for over a century, though my life is very different to yours and your mistress's. I doubt that you could understand me, and neither do I want you to. I've no desire to understand you either. There would be no point. We are much too different. A drinker of blood? But that would make you... a vampire? It was Mikey who offered forth her this label, after Henry's voice faltered. Mikey was an ardent devourer of books, and she had read before of such shadowy denizens of the night, much to her mother's chagrin. Lady von Essen had thought that Mikey, as well as a well-bred young woman, ought not to read at all. It will only excite your mind, dear, but should instead busy herself with embroidery. Mikey, however, had always preferred books to busywork, particularly work which involved needles, and she found herself returning to stories time and time again, whenever she needed a break from her own dreary life. Mikey had read all manner of books over the years, but she preferred adventure stories full of mystery, intrigue, and yes, even murder. Mikey knew from her reading that vampires were nocturnal creatures, often aristocratic, who shunned the sunlight, dwelt in ruinous castles, and supped upon the lifeblood of fair maidens. Yes, Mikey thought, in an oddly detached manner, that did make sense. She had sensed there was something strange about Magdalena when their eyes had first met. Magdalena really must have been a vampire. It all made sense, at least it would have, had Mikey been a heroine in one of her novels. But life, Mikey reminded herself, was not akin to a story. Mikey might have consumed books like a starving man, but she had sense enough to know that the words written within the pages of adventure stories were all skeins of fiction. Vampires all remained within the realm of make-believe. They had no business walking about as humans do, made of cold, unfeeling flesh with hearts which no longer beat. They were supposed to be constructs, merely figments of fancy. But Magdalena was undoubtedly real, and, unsettling though she was, Mikey did not take her for a liar. Yes, that is correct. I am a vampire and this castle is my territory. It and the woods that surround you. You wandered into my domain, you hopeless little lambs, while on the run from those awful bandits. I know none of this is your fault, and I have no quibbles with you. I'm not blaming you for what occurred tonight. There. See how fair I am? I'm too nice by half. Too nice for my own good cause. You have been awfully surly with me, the both of you, but I've only ever been polite. I would even let you go if I could. Dispatching of brigands is one thing, but I take no pleasure in harming young ladies. But I fear that would be foolhardy. I cannot allow anybody who has wandered into my realm to leave alive. I do not want you telling tall tales. I should snap both of your necks and be done with it, but... Magdalena's red eyes found Mikey's, then held them. Her smile, which hitherto had seemed so easy, faded as she frowned. You don't seem to be a mere peasant. I can tell from your clothes, dirty though they are, that you are from a wealthy background. Your voice and your bearing. Yes, even the way you look at me. It all suggests that you are, in fact, a lady. Would I be correct in that assessment? Why do you ask? It would be problematic for me if I were to dispatch a woman of renown. I would not want your disappearance to catch the attention of men in high places. If they were to send out a search party into these woods, it's now wholly impossible that they would stumble upon my home. I have lived out of sight from the public eye for nigh on a century, and I have no desire to invite half of Augsburg's constabulary into my house. The idea is incredibly unpleasant. Magdalena pulled a face, as a small child might when confronted with a plate of food they did not much care for. If you really are a lady, I might do well to exercise some caution. I suppose I can always spare your life, and kill only this dowdy common girl. Your maid, I take it? Magdalena looked to Henny now, her lips curled into a mean smile. What do you say to that? It is not a bad trade, is it? Her life for yours. Precious few people who find themselves in my abode are ever able to live to tell the tale. You would be one in... Goodness, how many guests have I had over the years? There must be a good 200 or 300. Aren't you touched by my thoughtfulness? Silence descended in the decrepit cell following Magdalene's announcement. Stuck for words, Mikey could only stare at her, her lips parted. What was she to say to Magdalene's proposal? How was she to feel? There was relief, certainly, at the prospect of escaping the cell, but Mikey could take no real pleasure in it, not when it would come at the cost of Henny's life. How could she abandon her friend, who had been by her side ever since her early childhood? Were it not for Henny, Mikey knew she would be dead already, butchered like a farmyard animal in her parents' carriage. Henny had rescued her once already. It seemed unconscionable that she could ever leave her now. Mikey turned this over in her mind, worrying her teeth with her lower lip when... Yeah... Well, if my life's all you're after... Henny reached out, taking Mikey's hands between her own, then said, of course she said that. What else is there to think about? It sounds like a fine suggestion to me. Don't you agree, Mikey? What? Mikey stared into Henny's round, soft face, her eyes vast and uncomprehending. Surely you don't mean that. You're not alright with this, are you, Henny? Well, it'd be a lie if I said I was jumping up and down for joy at the prospect of being eaten by a vampire. Henny's smile wavered, though she tried to maintain a brave face. But if it's what I've got to do to save your life, Mikey, then I'll do it. I do love you after all. I'm not going to let you get hurt. Henny tried to sound brave, but Mikey could hear how her voice trembled all the same. Could feel, too, how Henny's hands shook. Henny, like her, had heard the screams of the bandits' leader as they echoed through the halls. Though neither woman had seen his final moments, they knew from his cries that his demise must have been barbarous. Mikey could not allow Henny to endure such suffering for her sake. She could not allow her to die. Mikey knew Henny wished only the best for her, but... No! Mikey spoke up, her voice surprisingly cool given the wild fluctuations of her heart within her breast. I won't allow that to happen. It wouldn't be right. If one of us must remain here, then it ought to be me. What? No, you can't mean that, Mikey. Surely you jest. No, I'm not. You know I have a terrible sense of humor, Henny. I hardly ever tell jokes. I don't have enough levity in me for them. I'm being very serious. You've always looked out for me, ever since I was small. Not that I always listened to you. Don't you remember when I stole the keys to the mausoleum in my insufferable curiosity and crept inside? But of course I remember. You dragged me in after you, despite my warnings, and went about as badly as expected too. Didn't it just... Faintly, Mikey smiled, dire though their situation was, happy to share this memory with Henny. For all she knew, it might very well have been her last chance to reminisce with her maid like this. Mikey knew not what the future held, but... Lady Von Essen was in such an awful mood when she found out. It was quite frightening. I'd never seen anything like it. Oh yes, she was fearfully cross. It's a wonder fire didn't come out of her nostrils. I recall that she struck you, and then, when I tried to argue on your behalf, she struck me too. She struck me so hard, my ears still ring from it sometimes. Oh God, yes, poor hen. I felt awful about it at the time. Really, I did. I didn't care about my punishment. God knows I deserved it. But you'd done nothing wrong. You'd been perfectly reasonable about the whole thing. If I'd listened to you, we could have avoided the furor altogether, but I was too reckless. I ignored your wishes, but you still tried to protect me. You jumped to my defense just like a knight, and you were slapped silly for your troubles. It was horribly unfair. I've dragged you into all sorts of messes before, and you've always come to my defense. You've been a wonderful friend to me throughout the years, but I can't keep relying upon you. I don't want to take advantage of your kindness. But Mikey, I like it when you rely on me. Please, feel free to take advantage. That's what I'm here for. No, I can't. It isn't right. It's long past time that I repaid you. By offering yourself up as a sacrifice in my stead? That isn't what I want. Mikey, Please. Henny stared at her mistress, her eyes, wide eyes, entreating. I love you, but you're acting like a crazy woman. And you are the pinnacle of rationality, are you? Considering this crazy deal? That is truly insane. Don't tell me you've accepted all this. Of course I've not accepted it. I'm terrified, really. See how my poor hands are shaking? But one of us biting it has to be better than both of us. If I can protect you, then I must. I will. That's my job. No, it isn't. Not any longer. I'm absolving you of your duty, Henny. This farce has lasted long enough. What farce? You know what I mean. Magdalena. Yes. Have you quite finished with your little quarrel? I must confess I was beginning to feel rather left out. My apologies. I will endeavor not to be so rude in the future to my hostess. Mikey dipped her head in a gesture of esteem, one not so very dissimilar to the way Henny was bidden to bob around her mother. Mikey knew she could not afford to anger Magdalena. If Mikey was to save Henny, she would be obliged to beg and bow and scrape. Fortunately, begging and bowing were not beyond Mikey's means, even though she was a lady. She was no stranger to scraping either, having tearfully entreated her parents to reconsider her marriage prospects. She had failed on that score, but she didn't intend to fail now. She knew what she must say. It seemed a stretch that Magdalena would believe her, but if she did... I fear you are laboring under misapprehension, Lady Magdalena. Your reasoning is sound. There would indeed be a ruckus if a noblewoman was to go missing, but your application is not. I am not a lady, you see, but my companion is the clever that character is okay. Of course. Oh? Magdalena raised an eyebrow. Then you mean to say you are the maid and this lumpen Henny here is the mistress? Come on, that's not gonna fly. That is correct, yes. I know I am dressed as a lady, albeit a disgraced one, but that was part of Lord and Lady von Essen's ruse. While traveling, they often have me dressed as a lady, while Henny, as say Henrietta, dressed as a maid. It is a means of subterfuge so that, if our carriage were to be attacked by bandits, I am the one who would be in harm's way rather than my mistress. Only a truly desperate bandit would rummage through the pockets of a maid, especially when she is with her lady. What? Mikey, that's... Henny began, but Mikey cut her off. She was warming to her ruse, and she found she could not still her tongue, not until she had delivered her more whole address. Lady Henrietta is the one who will be missed in Augsburg, not I. She has a fiancé waiting for her, you know, and he is a very important man. If she doesn't arrive before the dawning of the next day, he'll be certain to send out a search party for her. You would not want that, would you? I mean, that part is true though, still. Magdalena pondered Mikey's tall tale for a few moments, one gloved hand resting upon her hip. As she thought, Mikey stared at her, compelling her through sheer force of will to accept her tale at face value. Mikey knew her story was patently unbelievable, but she didn't need to convince a whole jury, she needed only to convince Magdalena. An age seemed to pass, during which nobody spoke, until... Oh, very well. If that is how it is, then I suppose I have no choice. You may leave my abode, Lady Henrietta. Here, Magdalena dropped another effusive curtsy. If that is indeed your real name, I will grant you the chance to reunite with your fiancé in Augsburg, who must be awaiting you with no shortage of anticipation. Who wouldn't, after all, wish to dote upon a maiden as fair and fine as yourself? Your surprisingly well-spoken maid, however, will be bidden to remain by my side. Do we have a deal? Yes, I would do anything to ensure Lady Henrietta's safety. Oh, most assuredly. You would not consent to acting as a decoy on her behalf if you didn't care. What a wonderful friendship you women have. It is quite special, really, particularly given the disparity in your social statuses. Now come along, Lady Henrietta. It was very lovely to make your acquaintance, but now I fear I must cut our meeting short. Let me escort you to the front door. It's the least I can do for a woman of your lofty status. What? Mikey, no! Henny cried, but in vain. Magdalene was soon upon her pale fingers winding tight about her waist wrist. Mikey, please stop this. Tell her the truth. I'm sorry, Hen, but... Abashed, Mikey dropped her gaze onto the stone floor. Though she had given her life for Henny's sake, she found she could not meet her friend's gaze as she was dragged bodily from their cell. The hurt in Henny's countenance and the betrayal stung far too much. This is how it has to be. Says who? I was willing to go along with this woman's plan, but you scuppered it up. I don't understand you at all, Mikey. Why would you tell such a tissue of lies for little old me? Magdalena, please! Henny stared at Magdalena, all while trying and failing to dig her heels into the stone floor of her cell. Surely you can't believe my mistress. It's obviously she's lying. There's no way she isn't the lady, not with a fancy proper way of talking. She's far more genteel than I could ever dream of being. Her manners are certainly more polished than your own, yes, perhaps this comes from years of servitude. You could stand to learn a thing or two from your maid, Lady Henrietta. Your fiancé won't think too much of you as you are now, I'm afraid. Why, you're speaking almost like a fishwife. Now come along, let us not argue. You will give me a headache. But Mikey, I can't leave her, let me go! Henny cried anew, squirming now, but Magdalena's hold upon her did not loosen. If anything, it seemed to grow stronger, to such a degree that Henny screamed. Ow! Henny's cries echoed through the cell, more unbearable than those of the bandit's leader during the final moments. Magdalena had not made Henny bleed, at least, but she was gripping her wrist so tightly Mikey feared she might snap it. Henny, who was short and dumpy, could put up little in the way of a fight. The poor maid was quite helpless before her. There was nothing which could be done. Not any longer. Henny would have to leave, while Mikey would remain incarcerated in this dreary cell, alone. This was what Mikey had wanted when she had spun a frankly untenable story. So why then did she feel so guilty? Let go of me! Let go, I say! Mikey, please! Henny continued to protest, but Magdalena remained insensible to her cries. The door of the cell was closed once more with a metallic clang, and Mikey was left upon the ground, pale-faced, trembling, and all alone. This is solid stuff, honestly. I'm curious. It's building up stuff. The time passed at an agonizingly slow pace as Mikey sat on the stone floor of her cell with her legs demurely crossed. Without Henny to cheer her, the air felt colder than it had before, the shadows darker. Magdalene had taken Henny from the cell so abruptly she hadn't been afforded the chance to collect her scattered playing cards. Now these cards were strewn upon the floor, red diamonds, red as Magdalene's eyes, and coal black clubs. Mikey caught the eyes of a nearby joker, his lips pulled into an unsettling smile, and shivered. She knew she was being paranoid, but she felt almost as if the card was mocking her. Mikey reached out, fingers trembling, to grab the card, then flipped it over. She did not want to look at the Joker's grinning face. She did not want to think either about what Henny was doing or how she was feeling, and she certainly did not want to think of her own future. It would be easier to drive such musings from her mind, and yet... Though Mikey tried to keep her thoughts placid, like the smooth surface of an untroubled lake, sinister quarries, sharp-toothed eel-like eels writhed just beneath the surface. What would happen when Magdalena returned? Did she mean to kill Mikey quickly, or would she make her suffer first? Magdalena had seemed to derive great pleasure from her torture of the bandit's leader, but she had said she did not care to harm young ladies. Had she meant it? Mikey could only hope, if Magdalena did mean to kill her, she would do so quickly. She had suffered enough for one night. No, for one lifetime. Mikey, despite her heroism, did not want to die. The thought terrified her. When she imagined how Magdalena might kill her, a blade to the throat perhaps, poison, drowning, strangulation, her skin, which was now icy cold, rippled with goose flesh. She did not want to be stabbed or poisoned or drowned or choked. She wanted to live. Mikey had read stories of knights and their exploits, but she was no chivalrous sir herself. She was a young woman though not as her mother might have reminded her, so very young anymore, and she had little experience of the world beyond her parents' home. From an early age, Mikey had been taught to hold her tongue, to hold her thoughts, to be sweet and pretty and patient and, above else, pliant. She was not supposed to think for herself, let alone stand up for herself. It wasn't appropriate conduct for a lady. Mikey had endured 25 years as such, living only to please her parents, and her parents' esteemed visitors, and later her parents' chosen fiancé, but it had not felt like living. The only times Mikey felt herself were those when she played cards with Henny, or read her books, or sat up by her window at night and stared out into the garden. Mikey was 25, almost 26, but she knew nothing of the world. She knew nothing of freedom. She had never truly lived. How then was she supposed to die? She could not pass on, surely, until she had at least been afforded the chance to visit some of the place she had read about in her stories. Such dreams had been all which had kept Micah going throughout her dreary days kept indoors. She had persevered, not for the sake of her present, which she had lamented, but the hopes of a better future which waited beyond the horizon. Now, Mikey feared she would never be able to reach that future. Her life was to be curtailed before it could truly begin. She would never see any of the new world. The world now. Paris and Venice and Rome would remain a mystery to her, exotic settings for stories and nothing more. She had been born trapped, and now she would die. The only difference was, it was no longer her parents entrapping her, but a monster. Had her 25 years thus far been a story, Mikey thought bitterly, it would have been a hopelessly dull one full of endless waiting, but precious little doing. Waiting to live. Waiting to die. Was there any difference between these two states, really, when all was said and done? There's no point crying about it. Mikey muttered this under her breath, in the dark, for her own peace of mind. There's no guarantee I would have been allowed to live on even if Magdalena did set me free. I would have to return to Herr Gerhard, and we would wed, and then I would spend the rest of my days trapped in his house. I'll go from being a cloistered daughter to a cosseted wife. Is that any better, really? In Mikey's eyes, it would have been nothing but another form of imprisonment. Walter had the money to travel anywhere, but whether he would be willing to expend these funds on little jaunts for his housebound, bored wife was doubtful. Perhaps it was better this way. Mikey had no life, she knew, waiting for her beyond the walls of Magdalena's castle. She had never been allowed to live as she had wanted. That being the case, she might as well die. She had nothing left to lose. The minutes passed by, each more intolerable than the last, until Mikey was alerted by the sound of footsteps. The iron door which partitioned the cell from the hall opened with a scraping squeal, and once more Magdalena entered Mikey's cell. Though Magdalena had left with an unwilling Henny in tow, she was now alone. Henny had gone. Well, well, aren't you a sight for sore eyes? How fare you, my dear captive? I do apologize for the wait. Oh, never mind about me. What about Henny? Did you set her free? Goodness me, your loyalty towards your lady is most profound. I was certain you would be inquiring as to your own fate, but no, you seem only to care for her. You really ought to worry about yourself more, given the circumstances. But I shall endeavor to allay your worries. I did indeed set your mistress free. I escorted her to the entrance of my home, then bid her on her merry way. Why do you ask? Do you not trust me? You've done little to deserve it, given the way you've treated Henny and I. But oh, I'm so glad to hear it. I only hope that Henny will be alright on her own. That remains to be seen. I might have set her free, but there's no guarantee she'll be able to find her way to Augsburg. Not in the dark, with all this fog. These woods are dense, and the paths are not clearly signposted. It would come as no surprise if she were to find herself lost, or else at the mercy of wild animals. This forest is fair teeming with wolves. Did you know that? Wolves? Oh yes, this forest is just as much their territory as it is mine, and they often come out at night to hunt. Bandits aren't the only things fair ladies have to watch out for. But if your lady friend is resourceful and luck is on her side, she should emerge from this trial unscathed. Let us hope that she'll be alright, shall we? Mikey said nothing to this, but instead dropped her gaze, her irises fixed upon her knees. Her mind turned, not to her own indeterminate fate, but to Henny, who would now be staggering through the woods, wreathed in ephemeral fog. Mikey saw Henny backed against a copse of trees, their branches slender, sinister, as a pack of hungry wolves bore down upon her, their eyes glistening madly in the moonlight. But this was only one possibility. Magdalene had said Henny would need luck on her side, and Henny had that in spades, if her performance in Joker was anything to be believed. She had always been better at cards than Mikey. Now, enough about Lady Henrietta. She is no longer my captive and as such is of little interest to me. I would far rather speak to you. To me? Yes, indeed. I have designs on you, my loyal little serving girl. I do hope you'll make yourself useful during your stay. Designs? Then, you mean? Micah pressed her fingers to the base of her throat. She could feel her pulse beating beneath the surface of her cool skin, as erratic as a rabbit's caught in a snare. Do you wish to drain me of my blood? Do you want me to drain you of your blood? Magdalena tittered. How very eager you are. It is not that. Do not misunderstand. I wish only, if you meant to kill me, that you would do so quickly. I've grown sick of waiting. Oh yes, that look in your eyes is delectable. It may be more so even than your blood. You're so very defiant. But what is this I spy? You appear to be shaking, my poor little Mikey. That is because of the cold. And not because of your fright. I was able to protect my dear friend. I've nothing to be afraid of now. Then you care nothing for your own life? I've never been afforded a life. You may take it if you wish. You wouldn't be the only one. Ah, yes, that is the fate also I've heard of being a servant. You poor dear. Magdalena's red eyes softened, and for a moment Mikey wondered whether she could not see a trace of sympathy upon her captor's fair face. It lasted only a second, however, before it faded. Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm afraid I can't comply with your request. For the moment, that is. I will drain your blood in due course, but I've no desire to do so now. The bandits I encountered earlier made them for a more than satisfactory meal. I am so glutted I do not think I could drink another drop of blood. Then, you mean to draw this farce out longer still? I'll draw it out for as long as I wish until I'm sufficiently thirsty. There seems little sense in overindulging. I'm sure that your blood would taste sweeter than a bandit's, but that only makes it more imperative that I save you until I truly want you. Though it was Mikey's death Magdalene spoke of, there seemed something sultry, seductive even, in the way she stressed her words. Mikey was unused to being wanted, found the blood pooling beneath her cheeks, despite the chill which clung to her. How would it feel when Magdalene brought her lips to her neck? Would it hurt? She supposed she would feel a prickling sensation as Magdalene's teeth sank into her flesh, and then... Now, won't you come with me? You'll catch your death of cold staying inside this dreary cell, and then you'll be of no use to me anybody. If I am to enjoy you properly, I would prefer to do so while your body is still warm. What? Mikey looked at Magdalena, her blue eyes uncomprehending. Are you really letting me go? In a manner of speaking, yes. Though I'll only be transporting you from one prison to another. As your hostess, I don't believe that these quarters are wholly appropriate for a long-term stay, especially not for a fair maiden such as yourself. You will be in my abode for several days yet, I fear, until I have further need of you. Until then, I would like you to live in some measure of comfort. How unexpected. I didn't know that you were so gracious. I can be. I have hidden depths, much like the forest that surrounds my humble abode. I do so hate to see you shiver so, and your skin is so pale, poor dear. You and I could almost be sisters. White skin may be fitting for us vampires, but it isn't so for maidens, not even the fairest in all the land. Now, please follow me. I doubt you've any real wish to stay here, languishing, unless you mean to make a further martyr of yourself. No, Mikey bit her lower lip. She was loath to accept kindness from Magdalena, but she did raise a fair point. It was cold in her cell, and miserable alongside it. If she remained there overnight, it did not seem impossible that the blood in her veins really might freeze. Mikey had already given up on her own life, but she did not want to die as a stray dog, racked with shivers. If that is what you want from me, then I've no reason to refuse. How very biddable you are. The words which come from your mouth might be stubborn, but it seems you experience when it comes to following orders. Of course I do. I'm a maid, like I said. Ah, yes, so you did. That would explain your servility. Part of me was hoping you might refuse so that I would be bidden to carry you. But this is fine too. It spares me the effort. Shall we? Please lead the way. Mikey dropped Magdalene a curtsy, this time taking her dirtied skirts between her fingers, the pads of which had turned pink from the cold. Magdalena smiled at this display. For a prisoner, you're awfully cheeky. Then turned upon her heel after bidding Mikey to follow. Naturally, Mikey obeyed. She could see she had little choice in the matter. Magdalena led Mikey down a twisting hallway packed full of cells identical to the one Mikey and Henny had been imprisoned in. Mikey tried not to peer into these cells as she passed them, but curiosity soon overcame her, and she found her head swiveling. She feared, as she stared through the darkness, that she might encounter sights more horrific than she was capable of comprehending. Rusted torture instruments, perhaps, or dead bodies. But it was so very dark in the bowels of Magdalena's home that Mikey could scarcely see anything. Not even the moonlight, which spilled intermittently through the barren windows, could fully illuminate the sprawling prison complex. This, Mikey supposed, tearing her eyes away from one of the cells as she passed it, was probably a good thing. She had witnessed enough horrors for one night. Magdalena eventually brought Mikey to the foot of a staircase which led up from her subterranean cells. Careful, Magdalena cautioned Mikey before they began their ascent. These steps are steep and slippery too. If you fall, you may break your neck. Had Mikey been less nervous, she might have laughed to hear her jailer fuss over her so. A broken neck didn't seem like so very cruel a fate when compared to Magdalena's designs upon her. Perhaps it would be quicker to die thus, rather than having her blood drained. At the very least, it would be a swifter demise than freezing in her prison cell. Mikey felt little in the way of humor, however, as she took the chill banister beneath her right hand and began to climb. She could recognize the irony in Magdalena's warning, though, only vaguely. Her mouth felt hewn in a permanent line, as though carved from stone, her brow furrowed. It seemed unlikely she would ever smile again. The chill of the basement faded as Mikey cleared her final step of the twisted staircase, to emerge in a spacious hallway lined with arched windows. The hallway was not very dissimilar in decor to her parents' home, though was less ornate, the furnishings worn down by old age. It was apparent that Magdalena's home had once been noble, but it had clearly fallen to rotten ruin, its heyday long since past. The air and the ground floor smelt almost as rank as that in the dungeon, and every conceivable surface was heaped with inches of dust. There was so much dust, in fact, that Mikey could feel it in the air when she inhaled. The dust irritated her eyes and nose and laid heavily, unpleasantly upon her tongue. Mikey swallowed, hoping to void her mouth of the taste of decay, but in vain. The dust was so thick she sneezed, which prompted Magdalene to say, "Bless you." "Thank you," Mikey replied, abashed, and then, "I thought you did not care for God or His teachings." "I don't, but I presume that you do. I thought you might appreciate it." "I see. How very thoughtful of you." "I know. For a vampire, I'm unusually sensitive." Mute with fatigue, Mikey continued to follow Magdalena to the end of the hall, wherein a wooden door was inlaid. Magdalene seized the brass handle and twisted it, then pushed it ajar. It stuck for a few moments, as though unwilling to move, but soon shifted, creaking as it did so. When the door swung back, it was to reveal a vast, spacious room with a ceiling so cavernous Mikey had to crane her neck to see it. A large, ornate staircase was set in the center of the room, which rose to the floor above it, the banisters made of wrought iron. This Mikey supposed must have been the entrance hall. It had clearly been designed to impress, for its vastness was almost dizzying. Magdalene's home could really be a castle, was larger even than Mikey's, and vast enough to be unnerving. Trapped within the scene of spoilt luxury, Mikey felt smaller than ever before, a tiny doll rather than a grown woman, rattling about in a playhouse. The entrance hall must have been fine once, but it showed clear signs of deterioration. The dust was so profuse that it made Mikey's eyes water, and several of the stone steps which led upwards were cracked and chipped. A grand piano could be found in one corner of the room, but its lid was shut, and Mikey doubted it had been played, if it still could be played, in decades. There was a chandelier in the entrance hall, hanging aloft from the high ceiling, but when Mikey craned her neck upwards, she could see even in the dark that it was festooned with spiderwebs. The house might have been grand once, but it was not so now. It seemed a wonder, really, that it still stood, when it clearly was unscared for. "Your servants don't seem to be working very hard." Mikey spoke lightly, her voice swallowed by empty air. "Perhaps you ought to see to hiring new staff. My mistress would never permit..." Mikey brought her hand to the banister of the grand staircase, then drew it back, wincing. The pads on her thumb and index finger were fuzzy with dust. "This? Oh?" Magdalena, who had already begun to ascend the staircase, turned to look at Mikey and smiled. "Are you judging my home, Mikey?" I would never presume to be so rude. I just thought it might feel more homey, that's all, if it were less of a pile." Magdalena laughed, then shook her head. "You are quite right, of course, to judge. Please, judge away to your heart's content." "I've never been a fan of this place myself. Its scale is too grandiose even for my liking. My great-grandfather, it was he who had this place built, had more money than sense and absolutely no taste to back it up. A house has no need to be this large. But there was land enough for it, and money too. And when a man has land and money and means, he will often think, well, why not? Practicality matters little in the decisions of great men, and neither, to my unending woe, does aesthetic sense. I can believe that. My own father, my master, rather..." Mikey's face flushed at this gaffe, the tips of her ears turning pink. "Half filled with my own residence with pointless baubles. They were all very expensive, but not particularly cohesive. The parlor looked like a museum once he was through with it. It hardly seemed like a place to sit and relax. I was too afraid to spend any measure of time in there, in case I broke something." "And then it seems we have something in common. I found this place dismal even when my family was alive, and we had a legion of maids back then to keep everything spick and span. They kept the dust and the cobwebs at bay, bless their hearts, but they couldn't combat the loneliness. Now my family is dead, and all our maids along with them. I can hardly take on new hires, being what I am, so my home was rather left to go to ruin. I clean what I can, but there's so very much house to clean, and only one of me. It's quite the overwhelming challenge." My attempts at cleaning have fallen quite by the wayside during the last half a century. I hope you can forgive my slovenliness. Oh, no, it's fine, I understand. You're too kind. Magdalena's red eyes softened as they had back in the dungeon with something akin to sympathy, but before Mikey could ponder this, her jailer turned. Oh, listen to me prattle on. It is most inconsiderate of me, especially when you must be tired. Let us make haste to your room. Mikey followed behind Magdalene as a puppy might, almost grateful to her for the promise of a room and of a bed. It was as Magdalena said, she really did feel tired. She was more than ready to lie down beneath her warm covers, or even lukewarm covers, and sleep. Anything would have been better than the stone floor upon which she had been lying. Mikey yawned, her eyes blossoming with tears anew, while pressing her right hand, fingertips still flecked with dust, instinctively to her mouth. Oh, another scream. Uh-oh. But half asleep though she was, Mikey's senses were alert enough for her to detect a sudden noise. There came, through the yawning gulf of the entrance hall, a sound not dissimilar to that Mikey had heard in the dungeon. It was a scream, or was it? Mikey was unsure. The scream was fainter than the one she had detected in the dungeon, and seemed to emit not from the ground under which the cells lay, but above her head. Was there another person concealed in Magdalene's abode, somebody other than herself? Was it another captive, kept separate from the rest? Was it Henny? Magdalena? Lena, please. Magdalena is quite the mouthful. I'd rather you use a nickname as you did with your mistress. Mikey wished to contest this. Her relation with Magdalena wasn't close enough to allow the use of nicknames, but she felt too tired to engage in an argument. What did it matter really, how she addressed Magdalena, when soon she would be dead? Lena then. What was that noise I just heard? What noise? You didn't hear it? Mikey stared at Magdalena, her expression one of patent disbelief. It wasn't very loud, I'll grant you, but it was unmistakable. I swear it sounded just like a scream. A scream, Magdalena pondered, one hand beneath her chin. Such sounds are not unheard of in my abode when I'm attending to a prisoner. Mikey shivered. But there's nobody here now except me and you. Nobody living, at least. Then it's not the imprisoned bandit? Certainly not. He will never make a peep again. I made sure of that with my own two hands. Certainly not. He will never make a peep again. I made sure of that with my own two hands. It will be hard for him to speak with half his throat turned out, you see. Oh. Mikey pressed on a hand to her own throat, as if to check its integrity, and as she did so, choked. The air was so thick with dust, it was hard to breathe. Now, dear, worry not. It was not your mistress who screamed thus, if that is what you are wondering. I'm a woman, my word, and I promise I let her go. She's quite... well... she's not necessarily alright, but she is away from me, and there's a possibility that she might live to see another dawn. Then who screamed? What was that sound? It must have been your imagination. You have overexerted yourself after this night's events. Anybody would be exhausted in your situation. It didn't feel like a dream, though. No? Magdalena shrugged in a manner which did not seem quite in keeping with her aristocratic bearing. I suppose it must have been the wind then. It is very drafty in here. Is that all? That's all it could have been, unless you mean to suggest that the dead can speak. Magdalena's red eyes bored into Mikey's. So intense Mikey feared they would consume her. Unsettled, Mikey glanced away. No, I wasn't suggesting that. Good. I know it is expected for women to lose their minds at the drop of a hat, but I've grown quite sick of being regarded as the weaker sex. I'm pleased to see you're doing your level best not to let us down. Why, you haven't swooned even once, which is more than most men can say when I bring them here. It's really quite commendable. You might swoon, though, from a lack of sleep if we continue to tarry. Let us be off, or we shall never make it to our destination. Mikey nodded, then followed along behind her hostess anew. She could no longer hear the scream, but its memory haunted her all the same. That cry she had heard, though briefly, had not sounded like the breeze, regardless of what Magdalena said. Mikey was certain that sound had belonged to a person, but why would Magdalena lie about such a thing? It was impossible to say. Still going, by the way, this is a long one. And this is a demo, isn't it? I thought this was a demo. Here we are, home sweet home. So? Magdalene looked at Mikey, an amused smile playing about her lips. What do you think? Mikey examined the room mutely, her hands folded at her front. The chamber Magdalene had brought her to was dark, lit only by a pair of candles on either side of the bed. Mikey could see despite the darkness that was every bit as derelict as the rest of the Magdalene's home. However, and even if she hadn't been able to see it, she would have been able to smell it. The air was fusty, as though it had been left out to circulate inside the room for years upon end, which it most likely had. Every surface, meanwhile, was covered in dust. The sheets upon the bed, though neatly made, were holey with age and with insects, as was the carpet upon the floor. It was a sad room which had been ignorant of human occupation for years, but was still a superior set of lodgings to those in which Mikey had awoken. At least this room had a bed, a four-poster one, no less, like the one at Mikey's home, with a mattress and sheets upon which Mikey could rest her weary limbs. The bedchamber had a wardrobe too, though Mikey possessed nothing to store in it save for the tattered clothes upon her own back. There was a writing desk upon which lay a basin for washing and a chamber pot for more delicate business beneath. This pot was, thankfully, far cleaner than the one Mikey had found in the dungeon, so white and spotless she imagined it unused. The desk faced a large window which was currently obscured by a set of dark blue curtains. Mikey could not see beyond this window, though she doubted she would have been afforded much of a view even if she had drawn the curtains back. It was very late after all. It was not as cold in this room as it was in the underground cells, but it wasn't warm either. The wind crept in through firing cracks in the aged windows to toy with the reddish-orange flames of the two lit candles, to toy too with Mikey's hair and the hem of her dress. She shivered. Do you not have a tongue in your head? Magdalene needled Mikey, who had yet to speak. Don't tell me that you've come over all shy. I brought you to this room solely so that you might sleep. I have no wicked designs on your innocence, regardless of how pretty you are. I only want your blood, not your body. I beg your pardon? Mikey blinked at Magdalene, uncomprehending. What designs are you speaking of? You cannot tell? I'm sure I've no idea. None whatsoever? Not at all. I'm wholly ignorant of such affairs. Goodness me. Magdalena rolled her red eyes upwards to the ceiling, which seemed to sag beneath its own weight. I can't tell whether you're being dense on purpose, and whether you really are that innocent. Did your mother never teach you what men and women do in chambers such as this? My mother did not know. She thought such topics beneath her. That was my governess's job, although I don't think that I would care to do much of anything in a chamber like this one. It smells like the grave. You're being rather rude about my home, you know. Here I am trying to be a good hostess and you throw my kindness back in my face. I know you do not like your home much either. You told me. Touché. I did try to pick out one of the pleasanter rooms for you, but there are so very many of them it is difficult to get abreast of them all. I rarely have visitors over, and when I do, they all get thrown into the dungeon. There seemed little point therefore in keeping these rooms spick and span. I hope you can forgive all of the dust and the general disuse. Oh, I've more to take issue with than that. Yes, I suppose you do. You must have quite the bone to pick with me. Maybe I do, but not right now. I'm too tired. Yes, you do look it. Your face is frightfully pale. I think a good night's sleep is what the doctor ordered, provided you are able to rest, that is. That would be nice, but... Mikey let her fingers trail along the broad, brocaded covers of the bed, her expression pensive. What did you mean earlier when you said you've no designs on my innocence? Dear me, I thought that you were joking. But I can see that you're in no fit state for it. I don't tell jokes. I've little to laugh about. And you have even less to laugh about now, you poor dear. Magdalena cleared her throat. I meant only to say that I would not do unto you as a man might, regardless of our surroundings. I've no nefarious intentions, of that you can be assured. Mikey thought of her governess's explanation of sex and of Walter's expectations come their wedding night and flushed. If the sudden rush of blood beneath her cheeks enticed Magdalene in any way, she did not show it, though her fingers did twitch in their tight, constricted gloves. I don't understand. I know what women do behind closed doors, but how could two women set about something similar? It's not possible. You think so? I know so. My governess explained everything to me in great detail. When one wishes to make a baby, well, two women cannot do that. There would be no sense to it. And you think people ought to do things only because they make sense? That is quite narrow-minded. But people are often uneducated in such affairs, both in my time and your own. In some ways the world has changed a great deal, yet in others... Well, never mind. I can see I'm only confusing you. You're so very innocent, it hurts. Perhaps it's to be expected, though. Ladies ought not to know of such things. They are born and bred to be ignorant. What? Mikey had not understood the full implications of Magdalena's previous lament, but she understood well enough what she meant by this. Why would you call me that? I already told you I'm not a lady, I am Lady Henrika's faithful servant. Yes, you did say that. And that's true, she is the lady, not I. You did labor that point quite intensely, yes, back in the cells. You were so fervent about it, you almost had me fooled. At least, you would have. If you weren't such a terrible actress. What? Oh, don't what me. It's quite tiresome. Did you think I'd fail to notice all of your fancy turns of phrase? Your vocabulary is that of a well-to-do young madame, not a maid. Not even a lady's maid. You wear that sumptuous dress of yours easily, dirty though it is, and your bearing is definitively regal. You could never hope to pass as a common serving girl, not in a month of Sundays. I'm not stupid. Then... Mikey sank down on the bed, which creaked beneath her, as if in warning. Her palms were pressed to the mattress to support her weight, which all of a sudden felt excessive, and her heart was pounding like a drum. You knew I was lying from the very beginning? Indeed I did. It was very obvious. I mean, to be fair, it was very obvious. I could tell you have no practice in deceit, Mikey. You're much too sweet for it. But if you knew I was lying, why did you agree to let Henny go? Herr Gerhard wouldn't lift a finger to aid Henny if she disappeared, but he will surely come looking for me. Oh, Herr Gerhard wouldn't lift a finger to aid Henny if she disappeared, but he will surely come looking for me. Herr Gerhard, is that the name of your fiancé? Yes, it is. And you don't refer to him by his Christian name? That is... Dear me, you mustn't be very close to the man. Why, you make him sound like a stranger. Do you truly wish to marry him? I hadn't any choice. My parents... Ah, yes, it was silly of me to ask. That is how it always goes, isn't it? And what of your fiancé? Does he know you well enough to try and rescue you? I think he might. Mikey swallowed, tasting dust on her tongue. He's an important businessman. He takes exacting care over his investments, or so I've heard. I imagine it would be the same for me too. I am a Von Essen after all. There would be a lot of prestige in wedding me. So that is how he regards you. As a profitable purchase? I cannot say, after all. I hardly know him and therefore cannot judge how he sees you. Does that sum it up? It is not entirely inaccurate, no. What a woeful state of affairs this is. It sounds like you would be wretched whether you were in my home or out of it, particularly if the latter would entail being by this Herr Gerhard's side. Perhaps I did you a favor by bringing you here. Mikey did not reply to this. She did not want to give Magdalene the satisfaction. Well, never mind all that. Your fiancé can try to look for you, if he likes. I do not care. I doubt he would be able to best me. But you said you wished to avoid all that. Did I really? Yes, you did. That's why you proposed letting me go. Oh yes, good memory. It would seem that the cold hasn't eaten away all of your faculties. Not just yet, at least. As for why I changed my mind, well, that needn't concern you. But this is about me. Surely it must concern me. Oh, there was no real reason behind it. It was nothing more than an act of whimsy on my behalf. If you truly want to know why I went along with your chicanery, then... Let us say that I felt touched when you offered to throw your life away for the sake of your maid. Few mistresses would be capable of such compassion. It was truly remarkable. I didn't want your efforts to be in vain, that's all. And you're prepared to put yourself in danger for that? I won't be in any danger. I'm a vampire. I can shatter rib cages with a single touch. Or thereabouts, at least. Now, you really must get some sleep. It will be much better for you than asking all of these silly questions. But I've nothing to change into. What will I sleep in? I considered as much, and took the liberty of stocking these drawers with some of my own clothes before I fetched you. You should find that they fit, more or less, and they're clean, which is more than can be said for the rest of the linens in this place. There are books on the shelves too, which you may read, and I drew up a basin of water for you to wash yourself up in upon waking. You could find no better amenities in any inn. I do hope you have a pleasant night, and sweet dreams. Magdalene smiled sardonically, then dropped Mikey another curtsy. Just try not to breathe in through your nose if the smell bothers you. I wouldn't want you to spend the night coughing. A fair lady such as you needs her sleep. Laughing at herself, Magdalene straightened, then turned. She departed, her long cloak trailing against the age-spotted carpet, and shut the door behind her. Mikey waited until she heard Magdalene's footsteps fade. Then rose once more to her feet. She crossed the room, her legs trembling, and seized the doorknob between her fingers, but it stubbornly refused to budge. The door was locked. Well, of course it is. What did I expect? Defeated, Mikey returned to the bed. Weary from all that had happened, she collapsed upon it, her loose hair strewn in spirals across the sheets. Mikey stared at the ceiling, which was drenched in darkness, and softly muttered, "What am I going to do now?" Mikey's question, of course, fell upon deaf ears. There was nobody to hear her. She was all alone. And that's gonna be the end of the demo, because, okay, fine, she's not asleep yet. Fine, until she falls asleep. Mikey tossed and turned uneasily that night, in a bed which smelt of disuse and decay. The bed was more comfortable than the cell in which she had been held, but was almost as cold, its thin sheets eaten away by old age and insects. At least the dungeon, with its sole wooden cot and solitary window, was supposed to be inhospitable. This bedroom, meanwhile, was a different matter. It was richly furnished, but all of its decorations had since been ravaged by time's unrepentant advances. The men and women who must have stayed in this room once, more than a century ago, would surely be dead now. In that sense, the room felt akin to a crypt. Did that make the bed a sarcophagus? Mikey, a corpse? Magdalena had spared Mikey's life for her present, but Mikey doubted that she would be so fortunate in the future. Magdalene was not, Mikey reminded herself, a human, but a vampire. She meant to suck Mikey of her blood, and when she did, Mikey would lose her life, just as this room's previous inhabitants surely had. Magdalene's home was so decrepit, it seemed unfathomable that life could flourish within its walls. It was not so very different, really, from the Von Essen mausoleum. The air even smelt the same. It smelt of death. No matter how Mikey tried, she could not get comfortable. All the while, as she tried to sleep, she heard the wind howling outside, creeping stealthily like black-cloaked thieves through the cracks in the glass panes. Mikey's bare toes curled against the mattress. Anxiously, she shuddered. What was to become of her now? Okay, that should be the end. I'm gonna make it the end. There we go, and it is, there it is. Cage of Roses. Title drop, and everything else. Writing by Ebby Hime. Oh, Ebby, yeah, right, I remember, that's why. Ah, right, I remember that. Programming by, right, actually, I remember this. She did some of the other things as well that I've done before. Oh, I'm definitely gonna get this and continue this one fully. Because I know. She did the strawberry vinegar. That was a lovely one. That was cute. And a bunch of other ones that I need to get to. Yeah, stuff is good. I really like it. Well, the music by Bach and San Mancuso, and I missed a bunch of other credits, but opening movie Finalgo. Well, opening movie. What? What was that? Was there? Huh? Sound effects 3 sound in Pawn 5. Proofreading Zelen and Zolf. Shelf. Could be lots of things. Engine Renpi. I always say Renpi. It could be Ren. I mean, it's Python, but still. Or something. I think, I don't know. 2.5 Studios, published by The Thing, blah, 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 blah. And there we go. Back here. Okay. Solid stuff. Definitely gonna continue this eventually. Whenever the fuck that is. But for now, goodbye.